It's an honor to talk to both of you. I was geeking out during this entire film. It reminded me of the action I saw in Winter Soldier for the first time. Grounded, real, just brutal, incredible action sequences. My favorite thing about this movie is the grounded emotion, the connection both of your characters have, but specifically the song, the American Pie song that kind of goes from the beginning of the childhood towards the end and how that kind of reveals itself. I was going to ask each of you, is there a song in your own life that meant a lot to you as a kid growing up that it even means a lot to you now as well? I'll start with you, Scarlett.
I would say, I'm from New York, and so the Sinatra, New York song, it means like it has so many. It brings back so many memories for me of like being at a Yankees game or, celebrating anytime you celebrate in New York, that song comes on. You're at any bar and somebody's birthday or after New Year's, it's just playing at any celebratory thing. So yeah, definitely Frank Sinatra, New York, New York.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's still holds a good
for
place
everything.
in my heart.
For birthdays and parties, it plays as well.
If you're from New York, I feel like that's just a given. No, isn't it? I don't know. You're in DC. Definitely. Maybe you have your own version of that.
My parents are all on Long Island, so I know I love New York. It's my favorite place on earth. Florence, for you, a song that meant a lot to you growing up?
Actually, American Pie, we would all dance to when we were younger. So funnily enough, my dad would put it on when we were all needing to have a little like a spice up dance. So that scene was actually quite wonderful because it was very similar to what my dad does. That and Yellow Submarine. Because us as kids would love it. My dad would put it on as we were doing a car journey. My mum would hate it because we'd play it all the time. So it would go on and we'd be like, yay! And my dad would be like, yay! And my mum would be like, please turn it off. We have heard this times in the last car journey. So that just makes us all smile now. And just because of that.
To talk to you both is an incredible honor. I mean, I've been watching these films, obviously, for as long as they've been around. I mean, we're talking over 20 films. These characters have meant a lot to me as a fan growing up. Scarlett, I never got to talk to you after the events of Endgame. I never got to interview you after that movie. And I was wondering just emotionally what it was like to film that death scene specifically, what you remember about that day with Renner and kind of like shooting that scene specifically and kind of what it meant for you emotionally to kind of film that scene.
Well, there was a couple of different versions of that. And they actually originally shot a really long fight sequence. We shot it over weeks of time where we were being pursued. And then the two of us had like our kind of narrative between us, but then there were all these kind of outside things that we were then fighting against. And it was like a very long, it was a long stretch to the finish line. And then, when the film was being cut together before we went in for additional photography, Joe and Anthony called up and they were like, it's just like, we feel like we know what we're like anticipating this thing. And we just feel like it would be so much more impactful if it was like much quicker. And, kind of took us all by surprise. Like we think that the impact of that so we had to shoot it a couple of times. When we shot what made it into the final cut, it had that feeling for us, I think, on set too. It just felt so urgent. Like it was something that the character just like had to do. And it was much more about the emotional, exchange between Clint and Natasha and these basically just two friends who love each other. And that's where that gesture comes out of, just comes out of like pure love for, another person. And, it was really intense. It was really, really sad. But I think it makes for a really great moment on screen.
One of my favorite things about this film was the American Pie song, the song that kind of like goes throughout the film. Wow. And I was wondering, that was an emotional through line that pays off brilliantly in the film as well. And I wanted to ask, is there a song that means something like that to you, that like in the similar vein of that, where it's just an important song to you, love listening to it while you're driving, but just something that's important to you?
That's a good question. I mean, the interesting thing is that American Pie that entire sort of sequence thing came out of these rehearsals that we started out with, and it was me, Florence, Rachel, and Scarlett just sitting around talking about this family and the history of this family. It sort of developed out of that. I mean, American Pie is an incredible song. I mean, for me, I don't know. I mean, in general, I like really bad music, which I won't tell you about. But like when I was a kid, I guess, you know, a lot of this stuff, like I brought another song to Stranger Things, which is a Jim Croce song. And like, I used to love what my dad used to love, which was Jim Croce, even some, like a lot of older Simon and Garfunkel stuff. I mean, I can think of songs like American Tune, which is a Paul Simon song. And these songs that are sort of, you know, folk songs, I feel like were really important to me.
I wanted to ask you this since I saw the trailer, and I was just wondering this. The scene when you're actually fitting into the suit years later is so great, and I was wondering, in terms of that scene, was it actually hard to get into, or were you acting like it was hard to get into? Did they make it like super small for you?
I forget. We had a version of it that was smaller. I think there was a little bit of cheating going on my part, but there was a version that was smaller. But also, I have to say, the actual suit itself was not very generous. It is sort of, you know, tight. It has some spandex stretch to it, but it definitely was form fitting. And I was not, at the time that I put it on, I was definitely like eating extra donuts and stuff. So yeah, I was making it hard to fit.
That's funny. I was wondering, in terms of accents, and here's the thing: I know actors get questions all the time about accents, but what fascinates me about it is the specific inflections, the way you have to say certain words. And I was wondering, was there a specific element to the Russian accent that helped you find a flow? Was there a certain word or a certain way you would inflect it that kind of kept you in it and made you feel secure in the accent?
There's you know, it's so funny to talk about this movie now because we shot it like 2 years ago. So yeah. I'm trying to remember at the time like what it was, because we were working with different elements. There was more of like, as opposed to various inflections, there was more like a quality of like this sort of on the back foot of a certain thing. Like even the way I would position my neck in certain ways was very helpful. There's something interesting too about the Cyrillic alphabet in general, is that if you can pronounce the word, if you can spell out the word, you can pronounce it, because there aren't silent letters. So it just sort of like has a literalness to it that like that I think was interesting to play with too. But yeah, it was more like, as opposed to certain, I mean, there were certain vowels and certain things like that, but it was more just like a vibe, like this guy and like the position of the neck and things like that would help me with the accent.